So today we are covering just some of the many superstitions and omens that there are when it comes to animals. And very fitting for today, my cat Bikini is deciding to be incredibly irritating. I've already had a rant about this in a vlog that I'm filming, but today she is just been so annoying, and I mean that in the most loving way possible. So if you can hear a lot of meowing, a lot of screeching, a lot of scratching in the background, there's really nothing I can do about it. If you have a cat, you will know that there is very little you can do to control them. You've just got to live with it. Basically, it's her house, I just live here. Hi, I'm Christy. Welcome to Weird and Witchy Shit, a place for, well, weird and witchy shit. Here we talk about everything from the magic of yoga, rituals, tarot, crystals, astrology, self-love, mental health, spiritual stuff, spooky things, and anything of the mystical variety. So if that sounds like the kind of shit you're into, then you're in the right place, my friend. Welcome to the coven. So just a very quick disclaimer I'm going to pop in here. I obviously create a lot of content that surrounds witchcraft, the occult, everything mystical and magical, but along with that I also create mental health content and speak a lot about OCD because I have OCD. So I just want to be aware of the type of audience that I might be generating here, I guess. So with the type of OCD that I have, speaking about bad omens and superstitions doesn't bother me in the slightest because that's never something that my specific OCD has focused on. If you know that you have what is sometimes called magical thinking OCD or ritualistic OCD or just any of this stuff is going to impact you, just be incredibly mindful of what it is that you are consuming and take a little bit of control over that, and just really ask yourself before you listen to a podcast, watch a video or anything, just ask yourself, is this going to be detrimental to my health in any way? And if the answer is yes, I recommend watching something else, listening to something else. So that was just a very little disclaimer. And also, I'm sure you already know this, these omens and superstitions are just a little bit of fun. They don't necessarily have to mean anything. I just find them incredibly interesting. So if you have like a black cat or a black dog or see a crow or whatever, you're not going to die. Just chill out. Take everything in this video with a pinch of salt because it's just a little bit of fun. So we'll kick off our animal omens with birds. And I think this is like super well known that seeing birds acting strangely or birds dying is supposed to be a big sign of doom or death. In one way, birds are seen often as this sign of freedom, and really that's often what they symbolise. So they can be like a very positive symbol. So when they start acting strangely, or you see a group of dead birds, or you see many dead birds in a short space of time, that might be why it's quite jarring. That, and I don't think many people like to come across a dead body of any animal. And in some cultures, seeing a dead bird is often an omen that imminent death is on its way to you or to a loved one. Some people also believe that seeing a dead bird takes 7 years off your own life. I stay right in the centre of Glasgow. I see a lot of dead birds that have been fucking knocked down and shit like that. I can say if that was to be true, then I would have probably been dead about 30 years ago. And if you've ever seen the 1963 Alfred Hitchcock movie, The Birds, you'll know that the birds start going fucking batshit crazy and attacking people. It's a very jarring movie. If you've not seen that movie, I would recommend watching it because it's actually, I've not seen it since I was like 15, but if I remember right, it was very good, but very alarming. So I can't help but wonder if that's where a lot of the more modern day fears and superstitions around birds come from. But that being said, these kind of bird superstitions date way back to well before that movie was ever even released. Years ago, before news was so easily accessible and I guess science hadn't really progressed the way it had now, certain things didn't have as much of an explanation as what we know them to be today. So people would have to come up with their own explanations. So a lot of old wives' tales and superstitions and omens would start to take place over actual fact. For instance, sudden illness or death of someone you love is of course going to be quite tragic, but normally there is some sort of scientific explanation behind it, that you find out that they did actually have an underlying illness, or there is some sort of rhyme or reason that can be proven by science. But way back when science wasn't as prevalent and we didn't have the technology that we have today, people would often use the natural world to decipher where these bad things were coming from. So for instance, if your relative suddenly passed away without any kind of reason or explanation, and earlier that day you had seen a suspicious looking murder of crows hanging around outside their house, it could be quite easy to see why someone would put two and two together and see them as somehow linked, that, oh, those birds were an omen of what was going to come. Also, birds are more sensitive to picking up the vibrations of the earth. I don't really know how to explain that more than that, but they can often sense when a natural disaster is about to occur before humans can sense that it's about to occur. I guess now through our technology and stuff, like we can often see when these things are going to happen, and we can have the foresight to tell that there is about to be a natural disaster happening. But in the past, these things were completely by surprise, but often people would see birds starting to act a little bit crazy, and then this natural disaster would happen. So again, you can kind of see why people would piece it together that there would be birds acting crazy, and then this terrible natural disaster happens. You're going to piece that together in your head as anytime anything suspicious happens with birds, something truly terrible is going to happen. So some common omens, including birds, include it is bad luck to see an owl during the day, and hearing an owl's hoot or dreaming of an owl can symbolise death or misfortune. And I always remember my gran had this really strange thing with owls, and she seen them as a lot of bad luck. I used to always wear this owl necklace. It was like a big giant, like, in the 2000s, like, every fucking girl had this, like, big owl necklace. And I remember my gran being like, why are you wearing an owl? They're terrible luck. And that was the first time that I had ever heard that, because I had only ever known of owls being this symbol of, like, wisdom and being cool as fuck. But some cultures do believe that owls are actually evil spirits, and they're often associated with witch doctors. Ravens are commonly known as a sign of misfortune or death as well, and the fact that ravens can mimic human speech, much like the way a parrot can, people probably don't love that, along with their dark and menacing appearance. I'm putting that in quotation marks for the people on the audio version of this, because crows are the most cute and beautiful bird. I don't understand this. I get that they are like big and they do like a little bit but they're actually the sweetest little babies. Seeing only one magpie is bad luck, and I know this one because I have always to this day, when I see one magpie, been like, good morning Mr. Magpie, and the rhyme as I know it would be 1 for sorrow, 2 for joy, 3 for a girl, 4 for a boy, 5 for silver, 6 for gold, 7 for a secret never to be told. and I don't know what it goes up to. But I do remember one time when I seen like a group of like 15 magpies, and I was like, what does 15 mean? That's got to mean something good, surely. That never happens. A bird flying into your house is said to be carrying an important message for you. But if the bird dies in your house, or if the bird is white, then someone in the house is going to die. And having a peacock feather in your home is also said to be bad luck. And if an unmarried woman has a peacock feather in her home, then it says that she will be destined to spinsterhood forever. The most terrible thing that could happen to a woman. And I actually wonder if this has anything to do with Hera, the Greek goddess. She is the goddess of marriage, and she's all about the sanctity of marriage, and her sacred animal is the peacock. So I wonder if that has anything to do with that, if she's like judging me right now, like, bitch, why ain't you married? So, and I would never want to piss off Hera. Moving on to cats, and I feel like this is definitely one of the most common superstitions, at least in my culture anyway, that seeing a black cat crossing your path is either a sign of good luck or bad luck. I guess that depends on your stance on cats. I like cats, so I've always said that seeing a black cat crossing my path would be good luck, but let me know how you see that one. I feel like I can tell a lot about a person whether they think a cat crossing their path is good luck or bad luck. I read that this superstition became more prominent when the Egyptians started to worship the goddess Bastet, who is normally depicted as a black cat, and this frightened the Christians because it was, according to them, ungodly. So then they started to see black cats as a symbol of evil, and they had a lot of fear around them, and that's when the superstition came that a black cat crossing your path created a barrier between you and God. So they actually started burning black cats as punishment, which is fucking horrific. Black cats are, of course, often associated with witches and with being a witch's familiar, which is probably where a lot of the hate actually comes from, and they've long been seen as a symbol for witchcraft, satanism, and the occult. And it's often thought that the cat itself is actually a witch, demon, or evil spirit of some sort taking the form of a cat. In the 13th century, the fear around cats and their link to witchcraft was so great that cats and their owners were actually slaughtered because they were believed to be witches. The killing of these cats and other so-called evil animals actually led to an increase in the rat population because cats and other animals such as snakes weren't there to kill and eat the rats, and this led to the Black Plague being spread more rapidly. And the fear of cats never really faded because later on during the Salem witch trials, which, by the way, if you want a whole video about the Salem witch trials, I am more than happy to do that, so definitely get in touch and let me know if that would be something that you would be interested in seeing / hearing for the podcast. And once again, during the Salem witch trials, people alongside their cats were murdered and accused of witchcraft. One woman even testified against her cat in court and said that the cat had ordered her to abuse the town's children or that the cat was going to kill her. And I'm like, what a fucking insane time to be alive. Can you imagine someone standing up in court right now and being like, oh, I abused those children because my cat told me to? Straight in the loony bin. Some feline superstitions include that a cat can suck the breath from a baby, causing it to die, and looking into a cat's eyes for too long will give you bad luck, and that a cat's eyes are actually windows into another world, and if you look into their eyes too long, then you will be pulled into that world. And also, this is kind of a fun one, but if a cat sneezes 3 times, then if you will catch a cold, which is the most terrifying of them all. And moving on to goats, I feel like the popularity of the witch really led to people fucking loving Black Phillip. And I will say, I did love Black Phillip a lot. If you're watching the video version, you will see a little card up there that says live deliciously, and it's got Black Phillip on it. Now, every time I say this, I get hate for it, but I am not going to stop speaking my truth. And my truth is that I loved Black Phillip. The Witch was only okay. Like, I feel like it was overrated. I don't think it was as good as everyone made it out to be. And my fiance loved it. Like, he is like one of his like favourite films, and he is just convinced that I somehow didn't understand the movie because he thinks that if I understood it, there is no way that I wouldn't think it was only okay. But I completely understand it. I'm not fucking stupid. I just thought that it was fine. Anyway, hate me, but that's my truth. So I'm not going to give you any spoilers or anything, but in the movie, it's a very Christian family in whenever it was, long time ago, and they are being haunted by a black goat who may or may not be Satan. And the witch's depiction of what might be Satan isn't the first time that goats have been linked to Satanism. From ancient artwork all the way to modern day cartoons, the devil is often depicted as being a goat or having goat-like features. Like, even if you think about a modern day drawing of a devil, he's often got little goat horns and stuff. So this is just kind of a connotation that's been about for a very long time. A painting by Francisco Goya called The Witchy Sabbath, the Great He-Goat, was printed around 1821, and in this we can see a coven of cowering, terrified witches bowing before a huge black goat who is supposed to be the devil. And then there is, of course, Baphomet, who is the winged, horned, half man, half goat deity who is very often associated with Satanism. Even in the Bible, Jesus uses sheep as a metaphor for good and goats as a metaphor for bad, stating that those who follow God, meaning the sheep, will go to heaven, and those who turn away from God, meaning the goats, will go to hell. And then we have snakes, and once again, the Bible and Christianity done snakes so fucking dirty with the story of Adam and Eve. Actually, they done snakes dirty, they done women dirty, they done apples dirty. Men were the only one who came out of that like, yeah, but you didn't do anything wrong. You were tricked by a snake and a woman. I'm sure you know the story fairly well. I'm going to recap it as best as I can remember. I am a fair bit out of Sunday school and I've not quite caught up on my Bible study, but from what I remember, snakes used to have legs and they were free to roam about the Garden of Eden. And when Adam and Eve were put in the Garden of Eden, they were told that they could have absolutely anything they wanted, but they just couldn't eat apples from this apple tree. And then the snake comes scuttling in and convinces Eve to eat the apple, and she convinces Adam to eat the apple, and then God's raging, God punishes the snake and takes his legs away from him. So since then, snakes have always been seen as this symbol of slyness, sneakiness, evilness, when really, if you're convinced to do something because a snake tells you, like, that's on you. Like, maybe I'd be a soft leader, I don't know, but I just feel like taking his legs away until the end of time is too much. I feel like people have done way worse things than that snake done, and God hasn't punished them in such a way, but that's just my non-religious opinion. I didn't see many super specific superstitions about snakes. The general gist of it is just that snakes are evil, snakes are a sign of the devil, snakes are not to be trusted, yada yada yada, the same thing over and over again. Although I did find one website and it had some pretty funny snake superstitions, but I don't know how, like, legit that they are. One was, if a pregnant woman sees a dead snake, then her baby is going to be ugly, and it's like, okay, burn. And then there were also some not so funny ones, like if a snake slithers into your house and sheds its skin, someone in that house is going to die. I feel like you get the general gist of all of these things. There's a lot of death, there's a lot of misfortune. And then if you see a snake sleeping on a relative's grave, I don't know how often this happens. For me personally, it's never happened, but your property will be taken over by insidious people if that happens. And I know just in general, snakes are a pretty common phobia to have. A lot of people don't like snakes, and I don't know if it's because, I guess, like, I've just grew up in Glasgow and snakes have never been like a threat. I mean, I think we get those tiny little like grass snakes, like nowhere near like me in the city, but if you see a snake, it's not gonna kill you pretty much. And I don't think so anyway. I don't think we have any like killer snakes here, but I know obviously in other countries snakes can be pretty dangerous to see, so maybe that's why people are afraid of them. I don't know. I like snakes, they don't bother me in the slightest, but would I be freaked out if I seen one in my home? Probably. I'd be like, how the hell did you get here? Don't eat my dogs. If you've ever seen the movie Practical Magic, iconic movie with Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman, if you grew up around about the same time as me and you're into witchy shit, I'm going to assume that you've definitely seen Practical Magic, and you probably already know the superstition of the black beetle or the death watch beetle, where Sandra Bullock hears the ticking noise of the death watch beetle underneath the floorboards, and she knows that the love of her life is about to die. This is actually rooted in a real superstition that if you hear the tapping sound of the death watch beetle, then soon you will die or someone you love will die. And funnily enough, the tapping sound that they actually make is them hitting their own heads off of the wood. So when you think of it that way, they sound a lot less threatening. I used to always assume that they were called death watch beetle because of the ticking sounded like a clock. But that was actually a wrong assumption, and it's actually because when people were often on what was known as death watch, aka sitting by the bed of someone you love while they're very ill and about to die, often they would hear the death watch beetle underneath the floorboards at night, and that's actually where the association would come from. I like my theory better, but whatever. I can imagine that it would be pretty upsetting to know that you or your loved one is going to die and you hear this sort of ticking down of this beetle noise, floorboards, words, find them. So dogs are without a doubt the greatest gift that could ever be given to us mere mortals, but even they are not free from terrible omens and terrible superstitions. A black dog is very often associated with death and misfortune. Like I said, very common theme. A black dog is also often associated with the devil. And what can I say? Snakes, cats, dogs, the devil is fucking everywhere. It's also worth mentioning a black dog's connection to witches once again. If you watched my Day series, then you will know that Hecate, the goddess of witchcraft, necromancy, ghosts, all sorts of dark and spooky vibe things, is often accompanied by a pack of black dogs. In the British Isles, there is a folklore tale of a ghostly entity by the name of Black Shuck, who takes the form of a huge black dog, and different stories say different things. He either has one red glowing eye or two red glowing eyes, but meeting him is said to bring on a string of extremely bad luck and foretell that you or someone you love will soon die, and normally will die before the year is over. Some common superstitions about dogs are when a dog howls in the middle of the night, that indicates death. A dog howling outside the window of a sick person indicates death. When a dog howls an uneven number of times, that indicates death. If you have a dog who barks and growls at something that you can't see, it says that they can see spirits that we cannot, so you might well have a ghost nearby. And my dogs don't do it super often, but like my cat is always seeing shit that I can't see, and I know that she is probably sensing spirits. She's definitely way more mystical than me. It also used to be common that sailors would refuse to have a black dog on board their ship because it was said to bring the ship bad luck. And in Ireland, if a black dog visits the grave of a priest, it is said that he is being untrue to his vows. Caught an absolute belter. And our last animal we're talking about today is bats. And of course, bats are very commonly linked to vampires. And vampires are, of course, real. We know this. This is fact. Vampires are real. And then there is, of course, vampire bats who actually do feast on blood. But from what I can read, it's like about a tablespoon at a time. So, I mean, I could spare a tablespoon of blood for vampire bats because they are cute as fuck. So I would give it a little blood as a treat. Bats, of course, live in dark places like attics, caves, blah blah blah. So probably people see that as being pretty creepy places for them to lurk around. And then, like I said, Dracula himself can, of course, shapeshift into a bat. So they have long been associated with everything just a little bit scary. And FYI, there actually are over 1,000 different species of bats, and only one of them is the vampire bat. One of these species include the golden-crowned flying fox from the Philippines, and although it's not incredibly tall, its wingspan is around 5 feet 6 inches, which is fucking huge. So I don't doubt if I seen something whose wingspan was bigger than I am tall, I would be freaking the fuck out as well. The most common bat superstitions are mostly about insanity and death. There are many variations of the superstition about bats entering the home and what that means. For instance, a bat coming into your house and staying for a long time means someone who lives there might die, but if it stays for a short time, then a relative who stays outside the home might die. And there is an old Scottish wives' tale that says if a bat flies into your house and you want to avoid the misfortune, then you will drink a concoction of coffee mixed with your own burnt hair, and this will stop any of the badness happening to you. A bat actually has flew into my home before, and I will tell you that story right now, just before we finish. So I was laying in my bed one night, and I still stayed with my mum at this time, and I could hear like tap, 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 tapping on the ceiling, and I got my phone light and I like shone it up above me, and I just seen this huge, well, I say like huge, but it was huge for me because I thought that it was a moth, okay? And that's why like I jumped out of bed, literally screamed the fucking house down, screaming for my mummy like a child. I was an adult at this time. Screaming for my mother to come and help me get this fucking moth out the house. She came in and she got like a closer look and she was like, that's not a moth, that's a bat. So I don't even know. So my window was opened like a crack at the top, so I don't know. But the thing was like obviously like freaking out. When I realised that it was a bat, I wasn't afraid anymore, funnily enough. Not afraid of bats. Deathly terrified of moths and other insects, but I did just leave my window like wide open and it managed to like fly out and find its own way back out. But yeah, that's my little bat visitor story, and I felt like I was very fortunate for that. I feel very sad that I was like screaming, because if that was Dracula finally coming for me, I have blew my chances massively, but in my defence, did think he was a moth, so... And also, I didn't die and no one in my family died, so there you go. So that's the end of today's video. It goes without saying, be kind to animals always. I am always preaching about how you should be nice to animals. Love all animals. Go vegan if you can. And I will see you in the next one. Bye. If you'd like to continue the conversation, you can get me on Instagram at Christys_coven. That's KRISTYS_coven. You can also find me on YouTube at Christys Coven, where I post a lot of free yoga classes and shit like that. And I'd love to have you join, because it's not a coven if it's just me. And until next time, bye!